Okay, so I've heard all of the excuses. I want financial freedom, Dr. Mike, but I just don't have the time. I'm too busy. Well, if this sounds like you definitely want to listen to my next guest. She's an ophthalmologist turned entrepreneur who, in addition to running her own practice, she is the founder of a wildly successful telemedicine company called SimpleHealth. She has done entrepreneur conferences, she does consulting. She recently just started up a new project where it recruits physicians, writers in women's health, and is married and it has the ultimate of startups. She is a new mom, and yet she is juggling all of these businesses successfully. And if she can do it, you can do it too. So you don't want to miss this episode, my interview with Dr. Sai Nagori on this episode of Bootstrap MD. Hey guys, this is Dr. Michael Ming. Welcome to another episode of Bootstrap MD. I'm so excited. I've been trying to get this doctor onto my podcast for many different months. We've connected on email and texting, and she's putting on a conference, so it got delayed. And then there was a kind of some pandemic you may have heard about that's been going about. Then she had a baby, and I said, so these excuses, they know. But I was able to get her on, and I'm so excited. If you've been following physician entrepreneurship, you definitely know the name. Dr. Sai Nagori is a ophthalmologist from the DC area. She has her own practice. She has the Medicine Innovation and Entrepreneurship Conference that she holds annually, and she is the founder of SimpleHealth, formerly Simple Contacts, I believe, and giant telemedicine company that's kind of blowing up, not surprisingly these days. And I wanted to get her information and about her experience of being this crazy physician entrepreneur, that what I call our little weirdo community that we all kind of belong to, where we don't really kind of fit well, where we're that square peg in the circle. And I wanted to bring her along. So without further ado, Saya, it's so glad to finally get you onto the podcast today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. And I've been following you for a while too, and it's really nice to also just connect finally.
That's so awesome. And first of all, I mean, we talk about startups, and you have a new startup. What now? About how many weeks is it?
Well, it started as an initiative about a year and a half ago.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the most recent startup, maybe 2 weeks.
Oh, my little baby boy. Yeah, yes. He is the hardest startup that I've had to produce. And it's great. It's amazing. I'm a new mom, so it's a lot of adjustment, but I mean, something I've wanted for a long time. So
congratulations too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any sleep?
COVID, as bad as it has been, it has really forced us to have a lot of family time with all our, my parents and my husband's parents. And so, because no one's really going into the office, we have actually a lot of help right now, more
That's
help
awesome.
than we could have ever imagined. So.
Yeah. So probably when we'll talk about it, probably your experience as an entrepreneur and managing and delegating different activities probably kind of helps suit you well as a new mom, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a different kind of time management.
So let's get into it. And so we'll talk about your other startup as well.
Sure.
Also, probably not as important, but we'll talk about it as well. Also, your baby, Simple Health. How did that get started? Why don't you talk about your background and your decision to form this company?
Sure. So when I graduated fellowship, I moved back to New York, and I was actually working in private practice. And I'm just, someone who knew that I always was going to do something else. And I really couldn't figure out what that was. I just had this itch, and it just didn't feel like going into the office every day and coming home was just going to be my life. And so basically I started hustling a lot, like hitting the pavement, going to a lot of meetups, and trying to just meet with other people to get ideas and learn about what entrepreneurship was. I didn't even really know that what I was seeking was entrepreneurship. I just wanted to be involved in something. And I couldn't, now I can put a title on it that I'm an entrepreneur, but I didn't really have that, when I first started my journey after fellowship. And eventually, after going to enough meetups and starting enough things on my own that didn't really work out, and bunch of reasons they didn't work out. One, time, I was still working full time trying to pay off my loans. And that was a really big priority for me because I just was in so much debt, and a lot of my loans were at like really high interest, like 7-8% interest. And so I just wanted to like really eliminate some of those really painful loans. So still working, 50, 60 hours a week as a private practice physician. And then in my, free time, going to meetups and meeting people and starting these sort of businesses on my own with very little experience and, no help. And so a lot of them, unfortunately, didn't really work out for me. And eventually I met my co-founders, and that was truly through me doing a bunch of things and sort of being very public about it and going to meetups and meeting different people. And I made a lot of friends that way too. I just, was like, hey, I'm trying to do this. And people were doing their own thing. And eventually a friend that I had met through I actually volunteered at a film festival for a couple of years when I was a resident in New York, just found it fascinating. And just trying to expand my horizons. And I met someone who was in the startup world, and he also was not like in the film world. He also was volunteering at that festival. And so we kind of connected and we kept in touch. And a few years later, when I came back to New York, he actually connected me to my co-founders and was, pretty critical part of my journey. Just that one person who introduced me to my co-founders for SimpleHealth. And then we met and we basically were talking, and the first CEO of Simple Contacts, we now have a new CEO at SimpleHealth, but basically he told me like, hey, I get really frustrated because my contact lens prescription hasn't changed in X amount of years, and I just want to, renew it. And I don't understand why, someone can't just renew it for me. It's not like I have to go in to get my glasses renewed every year. If my glasses still work, I just keep using them. No one has to approve that. And so, of course, with contact lenses, there is the element of putting it in your eye, and your eye can, get irritated or red and have some issues. But for the most part, we did like a little survey of like 200 people. And we found out that about 80% of people don't change their prescription year to year. This is a pretty high percentage, right? And they don't change their prescription. They don't change their brand. And so me and him got to talking, and I thought, well, I can't really just go around renewing prescriptions. It's not safe or really legal. So how can we formalize this process into a digital health process where we can just do it remotely? We can definitely see the contact lens on the eye if you have a really good camera. And now with iPhones and a lot of the smartphones, the cameras are amazing, and you can really get really good definition, and then create a vision chart. And that's really how the idea sort of evolved, just conversation after conversation. And we didn't really know that we were developing a digital health / telemedicine tool, but we were. And then we just sort of ran with that. After many years, we ended up pivoting to women's health, and just being able to serve a broader group of people through a birth control renewal service, which is what we do now. We actually don't really do a ton of contact lenses anymore.
Well, all right, we're going to take a quick break, but if you've been following me for some time, I'm a big believer in what I call the 3 types of income that every physician should have, the trifecta, as you will. You've got your active income, that's your doctor's salary. You've got your passion income. As an entrepreneur, you've got a business that you can believe in, that gets you excited. And then one of the most important components is that passive income. That's income that's bringing in money that's working for you while you sleep. And if you're like me, you get targeted by all these different financial schemes. We all know about it. And you don't really know what to believe in and what not to. Well, these guys over at Money Insights, you'll definitely want to check out because I 100% believe in these guys. Christian and Rod over the gang over at Money Insights have got a really cool financial model that works perfectly for physicians. In fact, they almost work exclusively with physicians. If you want to find out more about them, go to bootstrappedmd.com/money. That's bootstrapmd.com/money. They'll tell you all about it. You'll be watching a couple of videos that really kind of educate you, and it's no obligation when you're ready to talk to them. So go to bootstrapmd.com/money, find out more about it. Really can't say much more about it, but just let them know that Dr. Mike sent you, and I think you'll be pretty happy on the results that you're going to have with them. And I can imagine with, this pandemic, that business is booming or increasing, correct?
Yeah, actually, again, unfortunate about the pandemic, but we have seen a really, really huge growth in March and April, and we expect that to continue. And we actually have a lot of physicians as well that have invested in our company and invest in our company. And so we've done really, really well in the early part of 2020, and we expect that to continue given the widespread adoption of telemedicine. And people are now seeking these tools. Right. I think before we would advertise and people would become aware of the tools, right? Like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And now people are like, well, how can I do that? And they're seeking out ways to, for us, renew birth control.
Well, that's amazing. And as someone who, I have LASIK now, but I had glasses and contacts, and maybe there may be some rumor here that I may have kind of try to figure out how to take my prescription, and is this the right contact lens? And then I couldn't figure out, so then I have to go out to my ophthalmologist. So I guess that nothing really was like that, right? I mean, we had to go and get our ophthalmologist to fill it out, and we had to wait, by the time he finishes it out to finally get it. And then, we finally get it, or they have us come back in. But I guess there really wasn't anything like that before, correct?
No, there wasn't. And to be honest, a lot of people meet telemedicine with hesitation. And I think the one myth that we can dispel, especially now with widespread adoption and use, is that, with telemedicine, we're not trying to replace the doctor. We're not trying to replace, people with automation. I mean, in some ways, when it makes things easier and we can do it with a really great reliability, I can see the value in that. But telemedicine really is about just being able to do something safely and efficiently, but sort of with the doctor's seal of approval, right? So each one of our patients was evaluated by a doctor, just evaluated virtually. And there are some things that you can't do, and there's some things that you can do. And that's what we did. No one was doing a retinal exam virtually without, some kind of appropriate fundus camera or device. And there's always going to be people that don't fit into a telemedicine appropriate exam. That's in eye care, in women's health. But then there's going to be a lot of people that really are appropriate for a telehealth visit. And so now it's much easier, obviously, to have that conversation. But I've been in the space for over 5 years. And I will tell you that, when I would go state by state to lobby for telemedicine. And I think hustle is just like a big part of my story and my journey, because I'd get like red in the face, trying to explain to legislatures and people that telemedicine is safe in certain use case scenarios. It's not, just a computer is going to, replace a doctor. That's really not what it is.
Well, and how medicine is and how antiquated we are at times. I mean, we still have fax machines. This is our main mode. It's like I have a fax machine in my practice simply because I was told I needed to get one. And so sometimes you have to drag them kicking and screaming, but we see how technology has dramatically changed, other industries. I mean, look, we're getting people in cars of strangers because of our app, right?
Yeah.
Ubers of the world. So, and a lot of times too is with that technology, and I think we kind of talked about it just before we got on the call, is people are scared, right? You're going to be entrenched into their little niche or whatever. You're going to be taking some money away from us. And maybe we need to do the right thing as a doctor maybe that's kind of what they're saying, but oftentimes it's really, money does play a part in it,
For sure.
for sure. So, but if you do it smartly, and that's why, we both have encouraged more physicians to be entrepreneurs, to help make those decisions, not other people, non-doctors, trying to make medical decisions for us.
Right,
What's been
exactly.
your experience?
Yeah, totally. So I think I was met with a lot of resistance when I started on this journey. Luckily, ophthalmologists supported me a lot. They saw the value in converting some things to telemedicine. And, for an ophthalmologist, and this is sort of my feeling as well, is that we really need that chair time for our most serious patients, right? I'm a glaucoma specialist. That's where I did my fellowship in glaucoma. And my glaucoma patients are very serious. A lot of them require a lot of time with me. And versus a young patient who needs a contact lens renewed, they don't really require a lot of time with me. Many times they've already had a dilated eye exam according to appropriate guidelines. And so they're really just there for a specific purpose. And it can be overwhelming as a physician to get these 15-minute time slots for two completely different patients. One who might require 30 minutes and one who really only needs like 8 minutes. And the patient, even that young patient, they don't even want to be there, right? They don't feel like they need to be there. They're there out of obligation because they have to get something renewed. And so I think we need to start accommodating for that. And so unfortunately, when I started this company with my colleagues, I had the Michigan Optometric Association came after me pretty hard. They started making complaints about me personally to the Michigan Medical Board. Most of them, just were completely false. And then some were misinformation, but then just saying things like, this is very dangerous for patients, even though, at that point I had seen thousands of patients through the system, and we didn't have one adverse patient outcome, 0 adverse patient outcomes, for the entirety of the app's existence. And so I fought those battles with the Michigan Optometric Association, and they came after me pretty hard. They came after me on social media. I got bullied online. Like, there was just a lot of negativity, and, you're always going to have haters. You're always going to have people that don't believe in innovation, that don't like what you're doing because maybe it harms their bottom line. And I was telling you earlier, I got the decision this week that the case was settled in my favor, and that was just a huge win. I think it would be really hard at this point in the middle of a pandemic to say that telemedicine isn't a good, use of medicine. And so, that case was settled in my favor, and it's a huge relief, obviously, but it's also an important thing for any entrepreneur to remember, that it's not going to be easy. You're going to have a lot of people that either are going to laugh at what you're doing, or they're going to try to, stop you from what you're doing. And you just have to, if you think that what you're doing is in the right and is correct and is the appropriate, and you really believe in it, you just have to have the, wherewithal to really continue forward and fight it. And it was rough. It was rough because, when someone accuses you of harming patients, especially as a doctor, you're like, you take that personally, right? You're like, what? I would never do that. No, I'm not doing that at all, And it was hard because at the compliance hearings that I had to attend and that my attorney was at, I was like, this is not about patients. This is about money. It's about a turf war. It's about things that have nothing to do with medicine, and, fortunately, although it took a while, the medical board recognized that is in fact what it was. And the decision was basically made in my favor.
Well, that's good. And sorry that you had to go through it, but I think, because of it, doctors are going to benefit. And of course your patients are going to benefit from it. And I think if we always go by what's the best for the patient, I don't think we can really go wrong. And honestly, what you were doing was going to be best for the patient and in future patients. So I want to talk about that too. So you were bit by the entrepreneurship bug. And you've always been very open about, failures and things that happen. But what kind of drove you to it? Did you have family members who were entrepreneurs or friends who were in this? Where'd you get your drive and your determination?
So I've always been sort of a starting something person, and I really don't know where I got it from, but I know I've been like that my whole life. And I didn't realize, again, that I was an entrepreneur. I just thought I was someone who enjoyed leading things and starting things. And I will say every single person, every single cousin of mine on my mom's side is a physician. So I really don't know. Maybe it's my dad's side has more entrepreneurs. But so basically when I was in high school, I used to teach dance classes out of my basement. When I was, in college, I just always was doing something like starting a club. And I used to love to dance. And so in college, I started a dance troupe with a South Asian community and, wrote up bylaws, and we, got funding. And so that was like a little startup, to get funding from the university to go and participate in different events and shows and things like that. And again, I didn't realize it was entrepreneurial. I just thought, well, I want to do this and it doesn't exist, so I'm going to create it. And, obviously then med school happened, and then residency happened, and then fellowship happened. And then, 10 years later, I kind of felt like maybe this wasn't my only calling. And luckily for me, I was in New York where startups were a very popular thing, and it was not, and I think I credit New York to a lot of my journey because it being in that space fostered a lot of that energy that I had. And there was no shortage of opportunities and events to go to and people to meet. And it was just so in your face, the whole startup world. And so I think that helped push me forward.
Yeah, it's certainly helpful to be around, different entrepreneurs. I'm probably no surprise to people who are listening or watching. I'm a little bit older than you, but I remember back in the days of, I was kind of in the startups back in the .com days. And in San Diego, we've got a little bit of a tech background, but then they flew us out to New York at the Javits Center, and there was this whole healthcare entrepreneurs. Everybody wanted to be at that time the next WebMD.
Right.
There's so many that could go out there and do that. But being around other entrepreneurs, I think, is very helpful because, as you know, entrepreneurship can be very lonely at times. When you were going through all these battles, it's sure you can talk to your friends, but sometimes they don't get it. If someone who's worked for someone else. But I think, with that camaraderie, that really helped you get through this.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree with that because, when this investigation was going on, I wasn't very public about it, except for with the people that whose help I needed to get through it. And I am very thankful to the ophthalmology community who really took a stand for me and said, this is ridiculous. We'll write support letters on your behalf. But the thing is I'm grateful and I am very happy that it ended in my favor. But, there's a lot of things that may not end in your favor. And so as an entrepreneur, you're kind of nervous to share until you sort of have a result because, if it didn't end in my favor, I think there could have been a lot of people that said, well,
well,
why'd you do that? Why'd you do that to begin with? Now it ended in my favor. It's like, oh, you're so smart. You were doing
telemedicine so smart.
You were doing telemedicine before anyone was doing telemedicine. But if COVID never happened and this didn't end in my favor, I mean, it could have been like, well, you just don't know until sort of you have that result. And, starting any company, you don't really know if it's going to do well until it does. Right.
So, and I've mentioned this on past podcasts, I'm, son of immigrant parents as yourself. My dad was a pediatrician. My mom was an RN. You say they're in the medical field, all your relatives. So I get that story. Like when I started my business, I didn't even tell my mom for a year. I'm chicken. And I recently saw like on I think it was Instagram, you put a video of I think your mom, I guess. And she, telling all the accomplishments, I'm a surgeon. I own I own a health company, telemedicine company. And she's like, no. And then, well, you want to share what you put at the end of it? It was funny.
Yeah, it was, I had just gotten into using TikTok,
Yeah,
and
TikTok,
so
yeah.
I was home for Thanksgiving, and I just created a video about, what South Asian parents think when their kids become doctors, which a lot of South Asian parents want their kids to become doctors, but especially women, once they're actually doctors, all they want is for them to get married. And so, anytime I'd come home with this, like, oh, SimpleHealth just raised, 20 million in funding. She's like, who are you dating? I'm like, did you not hear me? I was like, and she's like, yeah, I don't care. And then when I met my now husband, she was like, couldn't get enough of conversations about him.
That's hilarious. So when I actually was when I was, seeing patients, I left medicine for a time because I couldn't do both. I couldn't work on my businesses and it got too much. You're still, as I understand, you're still seeing patients, correct?
Yeah, I am. And I don't know how long that'll continue for. Sorry, what did you say?
How's that working out for you? How's that going?
Well, honestly, if it wasn't for the pandemic, it was going really well. And I think that is because I opened up my own practice. My husband is also an entrepreneur, and he has a lot of experience in a lot of different fields. He has experience in the medical world. He has, scaled an ENT practice before. He himself owns a few sleep centers. And then, he has expertise in real estate and a few other sort of different fields. And he's truly an entrepreneur of multiple things.
That's great.
And so when I moved to DC, I did look around for different jobs initially. But unfortunately, none of the practices that I interviewed with were really hopped up on telemedicine. They didn't really, and that's what I wanted to do. I said, I want to make this a telemedicine ready practice. And I even offered them, I said, listen, just give me, an admin day a week and I'll do it for you. Like, I will get you there. But most people weren't interested. I think when you're already making a good living, you don't really want to change the way you do things. And so I don't blame them, but I just had this very specific vision for what I wanted my practice to be and where I thought the future was. And so my husband one day was just like, why don't we just start our own? I'll help you on the business side and on the execution side. And, you obviously can set up all the telemedicine stuff. And so we did it on our own, and I was practicing 3 days a week. And when I was there, I was hustling. I was seeing a lot of patients, basically enough patients during those 3 days to sort of make up for not being completely full-time. And then honestly, I scaled back what I do. So I stopped operating about a year and a half ago. I'm a trained glaucoma surgeon. I was at NYU for over 4 years and did a lot of cases at NYU, a lot of tough cases. Sort of had to, I guess, prove to myself that I was a good surgeon. I was capable of doing all these things that I had trained to do for so long. But then I made the decision to stop. And that was basically because I think when you're a surgical ophthalmologist, you can't, it's really hard to practice part-time. You really have to be available for any kind of post-operative emergencies and things like that. Sure. And it also adds a level of cost to your practice. Like, doing surgery would then involve a surgical coordinator. It would be a day where I wasn't seeing patients in the office. So, just sort of managing all that. And so over time, it took me a while to decide to stop. And it was about like 8 months ago that I decided that I wasn't going to go back to operating. And so that was just, we still see surgical patients. It's just I'm not the doctor that does it. We have an ophthalmologist that does our surgeries and supports us in that way. But yeah, it wasn't easy to set that up. And I still, plan to see patients in the office until we can really hire someone and I can decrease my clinical time a little bit.
That's great. And how big is SimpleHealth? You've got how many employees or how many people are working?
Yeah,
so a lot to manage, it sounds like.
Yeah, so it started off with just three people, and then in the first year it was like maybe six. I've always been just a part-time with my role there, so it was one of my sort of requirements up front was I wanted to keep practicing clinical
Sure.
medicine. It just, I think that was one. I don't think that a startup could have paid me what I thought I, should be getting paid as a physician full time. And
Right.
two, I don't really think there was a full time role in those beginning stages. So I've always been sort of part time there, and we were three people, then six people, then 20 people for a little while, and now we're a little over 50 now. So,
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
and that's not including the doctors. So we have, you
Right.
know, 30, 40 doctors that are across the country that we have on independent contractor relationships with.
Yeah, we'll need to include them too, I think so. So there's a lot of people who are listening now who are physicians. They may be working in their own practice. Most likely they're working for somebody else. You know, um, I've talked about entrepreneurs. I've also talked about entrepreneurs, who always, the dream of becoming your own boss, of course, is very appealing. But for many, there is difficulty to actually go and do that.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think drove you versus others who may be thinking about it? And can you offer any advice for someone who's like, has got these ideas, but something is holding them back, whether it be self-limiting beliefs, whether it be putting my name out in there into the world? I'm sure you've gone through those things yourself. An advice you can give for those folks?
Yeah, I think one thing would definitely be you have to just commit nights and weekends to it. You have to, because if you're not willing to take the full-time plunge, which I don't blame anybody. I mean, I still am
Mhm.
not willing to do it, right? I just consider myself to have a 6-day work week. I do 3 days clinical, and then I do 3 days on my other projects. And then I have one day, Sunday usually, to just chill out. But I don't consider those 3 days work because I love doing the
Right.
entrepreneurial things. Like they don't feel
That's the
like work
key.
to me. And like it or not, the 3 days of clinical work, it's not 100% joy. It's, probably 50%, because then 50%, as you know, is like we're charting and we're doing things that are not medical at all. It's just
What, is
busy
that
work.
true?
So
Is really
so
true?
that's a little harder to get through my
Yeah.
day, because it's not that I'm just interacting with my patients and doing clinical things. It's a lot of call this insurance company and get this approval, and this got denied, and blah blah blah. So I would say you have to commit nights and weekends if you're not willing to go in. um, I would say self-limiting beliefs are definitely exist. And I think that for me, I just read a lot of books, I do a lot of audiobooks. I do
Mm.
a lot of mindset, excuse me. I do a lot of mindset shifting. And what else? There.
Any authors you want to share, or that you could recommend, or books?
Yeah, I personally really loved the book Letting Go. It's by David Hawkins. He's actually an MD PhD, and it's not a business book. It
Hmm.
is about you and your emotions and how you sort of react to things. And it goes through every human emotion, like the feeling of love or fear or courage. And it sort of goes through how you react in situations. And I think it's very applicable to personal life, but I have applied a lot of those principles to business as well. So, in business, you're going to hear the word no a lot, and
Mhm.
reacting to the word no in a way that's healthy and not self-destructive, which is, not wanting to persist and not wanting to continue the journey. And so I think for me, that book was really critical because it just made me accustomed to learning that when people say no to me, or I don't get an opportunity, or I get rejected from a job or whatever, it's not personal. It's not something that I need to say, oh, well, I'm not worth this position, or I'm not worthy of this collaboration. It is what it is. People have their reasons, and who cares, move on.
Mhm.
And so I think that was really a great book. And I also like that it was written by an MD. I don't know, it's just something personally. I was like, yeah, doctor. Um, and I like Mindset by Carol Dweck. I've
Mhm.
read
Sure.
that. I think it gets a little repetitive, but it's a good book. I've also read Amy Cuddy's Presence,
Hmm.
which I thought is it talks about like power posturing. She has a TED talk too, if someone doesn't want to, listen to the whole book. And then the 10X Rule, Grant Cardone, really good one.
You either
And
love them or you hate them, but yeah.
yeah, yeah, I've only read that. Well, I've only listened to that one. I haven't read it, but yeah, those are some of the things that I really did was just, and I still listen to a lot of books because I think they're really, really interesting. I just read Gary Vee's, one of his books as well. And so
Another one,
that,
you either love them or you hate them.
yeah, I love him, because that's kind of like, I'm very
New
much
York, you're New York. I mean, you're from there, right?
yeah,
You're
I need to be told like, you're doing this wrong. Like, don't beat
correct.
around the bush. And I'm kind of that way with a lot of people too, a little tough love. Like, this is, I was like, it could be wrong, but I think you're doing this the wrong way. um, so yes, I think, you can't doubt yourself. You got to just keep pushing forward. Books are a great way to shift your mindset. Um, Commit your nights and weekends, and seek help. Sometimes that help's going to be free help. Sometimes it might be paid help. So whatever it is that you can find. I take a lot of online classes, and I really enjoy them. I watch a lot of YouTube. I learn how to do a lot of stuff on YouTube. I try to network a lot, and I always try to give when I'm asking. And I think that's helped me a lot as an entrepreneur because there are certain things that you're just not going to learn on your own because they're so nuanced. And you really need to learn from someone that's done it before. It's when I'm asking for help, I really, really do my best to try to give back if I can, or at least offer it in some way. Whether it's promoting one of my mentors' products or just sending good things their way as much as I can.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really what it's all about. It's just the more that you give, I think whether you're spiritual or whatever you want to think, it comes back hundredfold, full to it. We know people who is like, oh, this is just my audience. Nobody should hear anything about my audience. And my thing is like, I'm all about what can we do to put everybody up, right? That's really where it is, and it opens up more doors. And as someone who's been, an entrepreneur for a while, at the beginning there was crickets in the medical field, and now we've got 10,000 people showing up for virtual summits. So this is really an amazing time, I think, and going in and becoming innovative, and what you said about 6 days a week and nights a week and doing it. And so many times when I talk with physicians, they want to start a business, they're not willing to do that for whatever reason. I know for myself is, what helped me say it was having people on payroll.
Yeah.
Being responsible for payroll. It's going to make you think twice that, oh, maybe I can just like blow it off, right?
Right.
Because it's not your business. It's not just you. It's your employees. It's the patients that you're helping. It's all your partners, obviously. All of that are it for it to become one. To become successful.
Yeah. And staying mission focused is really important too. I think it's really easy to start to want to get a quick return on some things.
Sure.
And if you stay mission focused, and that's hard when you're in debt. It's hard when you are struggling between two careers. But you have to stay mission focused. And I think it's something that all of us have to remind ourselves. Even the most seasoned entrepreneurs remind themselves to stay mission focused when they're starting something new.
So yeah, I could talk to you with days, just like talking, because it's so very easy to talk to you. You got some war stories I know that we didn't dig into, but I do want to touch on a couple things too. I understand you also do consulting on the side as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Equity and pay, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I do consulting in all sorts of different areas. I've worked for pharmaceutical companies. I have done individual consulting and business coaching for fellow physicians and fellow entrepreneurs. And
I don't think you even really talk about that or promote it really that much, do you?
no, I want to, but it's something that I've done on a one-off if someone reaches out to me.
Right.
But I have really thought about formalizing it, maybe actually doing, like a course or some kind of weekly group. So definitely still on my to-do list. But I think one of the things that I am trying to do is hone in on things a little bit more. So I'm trying not to, sort of
Yeah,
scatter myself.
you're bit by that. The to-do list that's like 25 pages, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But consulting is great though, because it really is nice to uh, do something and get paid for it and sort of be done with it, rather than when you're an entrepreneur and you're in business, you're never done with your business. It goes on forever, right? So when I do a consulting job, I do something, I get my check and it gets deposited and I kind of know the agreement. Or if it's equity, then I'm not the leader in that situation. So I respond to something, I do my job, whatever it is they need me to do. And then again, I can put it away for a little while. And so I think I really enjoy having that mix. I don't think I could do 100% consulting because it's just, I like having my own
right.
project.
Sometimes you got to build your own business too, and not always help other people's business. But I do enjoy working with startups too. I'm sure you like that too, working with other entrepreneurs. I'm sure as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And speaking about that, because you got so many other things, you're also introducing a women's initiative program. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so SimpleHealth is basically my brainchild and love child, I guess, because
How many children do you want?
humans, 3. Businesses, I don't know yet.
They're serial entrepreneurs. So.
Yeah. Well, I went through this personal experience that I was in my mid 30s in New York, and I hadn't, met my husband yet, and I felt very pressured to meet someone and date, and that was because of my desire to have children. And so I decided to freeze my eggs sort of before, I don't want to say before it was cool, but like before it became very
Right.
widespread in terms of there being ads all over Instagram and a lot of people talking about it. It was kind of something that I didn't really tell a lot of people, and I'm a very vocal person about what I'm going through. And so I just kind of did it. I think I made like one Instagram post about it. And I had a really tough time understanding the nuances of the process. So I got the general concept that I was going to have my eggs frozen. They were going to be put on ice. But a lot of the nuances confused me. And I guess at that point I thought to myself, this was like over 4 years ago, if I have this much trouble as a physician who has, I have like 9 friends who are OBGYNs that I can text any time of the day. I can't even imagine what a woman who's not a physician, goes through when she has to do some of these female health things. And so that's sort of where it was. The idea came about, and obviously I was doing a lot of other things. And then SimpleHealth went into women's health as well. And so I thought, I really want to create this physician community that can deliver really good evidence-based information in a palatable format. And really 2 reasons for that. One is I want the public to get really good information that's not fake news, so to speak, right? Because there's a lot of garbage out there.
Sure.
And women, there's a lot of things that have changed in women's health, from things like policy around birth control to all the new things that are happening in fertility, and all the new awareness about mental health and a lot of the postpartum issues. So that's one, but also to bring together these physicians and give them a voice, because again, there's so much fake news, and I feel like so many physicians spend half our time on social media trying to correct people. And that's kind of silly. Why do we have to prove that we're right? Why do we have to prove that vaccines work? Like, we already proved that. That's why vaccines exist, because we already did, our predecessors already did the heavy lifting on that. And so I saw a lot of people on Twitter and on Instagram and on social media and Facebook, fighting to prove what is already fact. And so that just sort of inspired me to bring these female physicians together and start and create a platform for evidence-based women's health information and parenting information as well, because we know, women tend to be the healthcare leaders of their families.
Yeah, because it can get kind of vicious, right? And
Yeah.
these are you're putting yourself out there and just saying, "Hey, the world is round."
Yeah.
You're getting attacked, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's crazy. So I guess we'll have more about that, and we'll leave a link to it on our show notes when that becomes available.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and it's up and running now. It's just femhealthproject.com.
Oh, okay,
If there's any physicians that want to participate, and it's not just limited to OBGYNs. We have all sorts of physicians that are contributors to our site and our and now I'm doing a virtual summit. Hopefully, we have getting together about 35 speakers, and we should be launching that this summer.
Like you don't have anything else going on.
Just my baby.
That's awesome. Also, I wanted to make sure that we highlight your telemedicine course. Can you want to tell some folks about that?
Yeah, so the telemedicine course is something that I created basically because my bandwidth ran out to sort of one-on-one help doctors launch telemedicine practices. I was getting questions on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Instagram on, how do I do this? And unfortunately, I've got a lot of stuff going on, so I can't really jump on the phone with everybody. And so, but I still wanted to obviously help them get started, and I'm always available for questions via email once they're enrolled in my course, and basically what it does is it teaches you how to take start a virtual practice, get it up and running off the ground, some background information, then goes into platforms, and then billing, coding, some nuances, and then just some tips for success in telemedicine. And I run my own virtual practice, and obviously I helped to start a telemedicine company. So if anyone wants to do any of those things, it would be, a useful resource for them.
Yeah, it's not just theory, guys. She's in the trenches actually doing it every single day and night. Saya, it's been wonderful. I don't want to take too much of your time. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way for that?
They can just email me, to be honest. It's just saya@simplehealth.com.
Perfect. Well,
sorry, I also have an email list, which is at medicineandtech.com if they wanted to.
Okay, so we'll have all that available. Saya, thank you so much for your time. Go back to your baby. Thank your in-laws for watching them. All the best to you. Where do you see Simple Health in 5 years?
I think we're going to really start dominating the women's health space, and we're bringing in more and more physicians, which again is something I'm super passionate about. Like, I like when healthcare companies are led by physicians. So, we have many physicians that are actively involved right now, but I would have to pride myself on saying that we're probably one of the smaller companies that has probably more physicians than some of the larger companies, because we're really driven by making sure that the protocols that we use and everything that we're doing is sort of got the gold seal of approval from doctors. So more women's health, maybe even some other avenues, but definitely expanding more into women's health beyond birth control.
Okay, are you hiring now, or is it are you for those who are interested?
So if anyone's interested in a telemedicine position with my company or any other companies that I'm associated with, they can just enter their email into medicineandtech.com. And if I see an opportunity, either again at my company or someone else's, I usually will send it out through that email list.
Awesome stuff. Again, thank you so much for your time. I know you don't have a lot of it. Get some sleep. Maybe over the next week, think about it. Put it in your to-do list.
Yep.
In your bullet journal, sleep. Thanks
Sundays.
Again, this is wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And just before we end here, I always like to ask, one advice you want to give to the entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs in our audience.
So this is a piece of advice that I give pretty often, because I think it's happened to me so many times, is that, you have to be resilient when you fail, and you're probably going to fail a lot. Just try to learn from it, fail forward. We hear that a lot, but you really have to fail forward and realize that it's okay to feel bad. You are going to feel bad. That's natural, but just shift that thinking so that you can learn from the experience that didn't work out, and just keep going, because eventually something will work out. And even when something works out, even that's going to have bumps in the road, you know? So I think that, like, my practice was doing great, but who could have predicted a pandemic, right? I thought that was, you know, it's like, wow, it's, you know, in just a year, it's doing really, really well. And then boom, March, you know, had to close our doors, go virtual. So, you know, you never really know. Even when things are going well and you've done everything right, you're going to hit a bump in the road, and you just, it's how you react to that that's going to
Right, but
really
somehow you're
determine.
able to find it. I know it's hard to say that you have a silver lining, but you know, we know that in times of turbulence, that's where entrepreneurs step up, and when there is opportunity. And now you're seeing that with your other company too. So
Yeah.
yeah, hard to say, but again, thank you again so much. Thank you guys for listening, and as always, keep moving forward.
All right. Thank you.